Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Rachel. Let's get back into it. How do you respond to disrespectful behavior in the workplace? Find out today on the art and science of difficult conversations.
Let's jump into Roleplay, if you're open, so our listeners and viewers can experience some of the sample things and sentences so they can get some ideas and tools on what they can say in this situation. I have a first scenario. Let's say I love to joke, and often my jokes land badly. Let's say you and I are peers. What would you do if I just say some joke that kind of hurts? What would you tell me in that situation?
So I learned a great word. Oof, is a sound that it was not part of my vocabulary, but some of the much younger, employees that I work with, they love oof. And I have adopted it. So if something doesn't land, oof, that was rough. And, or ouch. Or, that one's not funny. Those are the types of things that just can, without being really confrontational, but getting your feelings across in a way that it doesn't sit well with you, and then going back into the agenda if this is the first time, or it wasn't a serious, miscue. But if it does become a pattern, you got to pull that person aside, and then have that conversation.
What would happen if I say, but Rachel, I'm just joking. You got to have some sense of humor. We need to have some fun here.
Hey, Lucy, I'm not questioning your intent. I'm just describing the impact that it had on me, and it doesn't feel right. And then I just stop and let them sit with that. Sometimes you have to remember that silence is your friend. You do not have to fill every silence, every awkward thing. Sometimes short and sweet is the way to go, and just let it sit there.
Mm-hmm.
Can I throw one more here?
Sure.
What some people might say, but Rachel, you're too sensitive. You shouldn't just be so serious about it.
I mean, yes, that happens. It's, I'm sorry that you think that I'm being sensitive. You know what? I just want to keep this conversation focused on what we need to accomplish. It's not about what you mean. It's just like, let's stick to the things that we can agree on right now.
Let's say Lucy is somebody that's below you hierarchically, but she doesn't report to you. Like she's on a different team altogether.
I call those things out, and I coach the teams that I work with to call those things out, to say, hey, Lucy, I know you don't report to me, but that doesn't feel appropriate. And I leave it at that. Sometimes if I feel that the person needs to go further, it may say, I don't know if you've ever been told this before, but I'm telling you this because I want you to be successful, and I want people to enjoy working with you. So I know you don't report to me, but you need to know.
I appreciate that approach, because I think a lot of leaders in that situation tend to then go to Lucy's boss and say, hey, Lucy said something inappropriate in that meeting. Can you give her some feedback? But they won't give any details about what was said or why it was inappropriate. Just, you got to give Lucy some feedback. She's not doing well.
And that doesn't help anyone, because
Right.
when you're giving feedback, it needs to be with something specific that has been observed. And if you haven't, or the best feedback is, timely and that you've observed something and you can give a specific example. And so if you pass the buck, so to speak, and you give it to their boss, maybe they need to know about it as their boss, or maybe this was just you giving them some feedback, and maybe it's not going to be an issue ever before. And again, not everything needs to become a huge deal. Sometimes just letting somebody know that they're out of line on something, that's enough that it doesn't
That's right.
become a repeating behavior. But being able to speak to, here's what I observed, I was in the meeting, has a lot more impact than Lucy's boss, who wasn't there, saying, oh, I heard something from someone who might have had this happen. And then they
Yep.
say, oh, well, you misinterpreted it, or that's not how it happened. And blah,
Yes,
blah, blah, blah,
exactly.
blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah,
It just doesn't land in the same
yeah.
way.
Drives me bonkers.
Yeah.
Let's
Me
say,
too.
no, this time now you are a frontline supervisor and Lucy's a VP or maybe even the CEO of the company. How does your approach change, if at all?
So it's the leader who said something
Yep.
that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Look, this is about power and psychological safety
That's right.
and feeling like you're not going to be retaliated against. It depends on the circumstances of all that nuance. But if this is somebody that you have a relationship with, some of the same, oof, can work in that situation. Also, we're all human. We make mistakes. We say
Yep.
stupid things that
Yep.
it okay. So sometimes an oof can work in that scenario. Other times, um, you know, saying something to somebody to this leader after the meeting to say, hey, I just wanted you to know I and potentially a few others felt a little uncomfortable with this. And I didn't want to call you out in the meeting, but I wanted you to be aware. And again, that not everyone feels that they have the ability to do that. And I understand that. But this
Mhm.
is part of where self advocacy and practice makes a difference.
When you're saying self advocacy and practice, I wonder if you even had some visceral reaction in your body when I said, Rachel, you're just too sensitive. And if you did, maybe you didn't because we know it's a role play. But if you did, what is your internal process to go through that? And rather than, because some people can shut down, some people can explode as the visceral reaction. What would you advise the listeners to do, or steps to take to calm down first? And what would be the next step?
So I have learned, and it took me a really, really, really long time to learn this, have not perfected it, but I have learned that it is okay to say, you know what? I need to think about all this. I'm going to get back to you, or I need to process this. I want to stop the conversation. Can we talk about this more tomorrow? If somebody says you're too sensitive. And that I have not mastered it. I have a lot of admiration for people who have, because, that emotional regulation helps you from getting angry and lashing out, helps some people to keep from crying when that's their first emotional response, or whatever other emotional response you may have. But yeah, when somebody says I'm being too sensitive, I know I have an emotional reaction. I feel that in my gut. Or don't you have a sense of humor?
Mm.
I
Yep.
I feel that. Um, you know, there's something that I've learned when I don't personally, I don't get the you're too sensitive too often. I get, don't you have a sense of humor? And my response has always been, and I learned this from an old boss many, many, many years ago, is, yeah, I do have a sense of humor. Unfortunately, what you said wasn't that funny. And I try to
Love that.
say it in a funny, casual sort of way,
Yeah.
but it gets my point across. But everybody's got to find what works for them. And that, I mean, that works for me personally. I often coach people on that, but it doesn't resonate with everyone. It doesn't work
Yeah.
for them. So you've got to find the phrase that works for you, that can be embedded kind of in your muscle memory, so that if that comes up, particularly if you're somebody that it comes up for on a regular basis, you have an appropriate response to
Yeah.
without a huge reaction.
Makes sense.
And this is a common question I get. I assume Lucy gets this also, but what's a good timing for this feedback? Should you give it after the first time you experience it, after a couple of times, or after you notice it's becoming a pattern? What are the considerations you have for timing?
So I'm going to put on my true HR hat for a minute. If we
Yeah.
are talking a discriminatory comment, a comment that is about a person and their gender, their race, their sexuality, et cetera, now immediate, that has to stop. That's not appropriate. Uh, that is a now and immediate. And if you, for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable, then get help, go to your HR team, go to your leader to have that conversation. But in my experience, when someone makes a very inappropriate comment that could be bordering on or is harassment,
Mm.
or discrimination, telling someone to stop actually very often stops them in their tracks. They have just never been called on it before, or didn't realize, or there's a lot of things now that expressions that we as Americans use that we don't know the origin of some of those expressions. And maybe you still don't know the origin of some of those expressions. And somebody may say to you, like, do you know what that actually means? So for those types of scenarios, it's now. It is immediate. It is, it might be immediately after the meeting, but it's not, after the third or fourth or 10th time. In other scenarios, when somebody is just, being a jerk, being a little off, whatever the case may be, it's, how are you feeling about it? What is the impact on you? You may give someone a pass. Sometimes people give someone a pass the first time, but by the second time where it's becoming a pattern, they're really not comfortable with it anymore. And so they will speak up. It also depends on how far on the offensive spectrum was the comment. Those are the things that I think about. And when I'm talking to leaders, I also say to them, if this was the only news story, this was the only point of fact we had, and this was going to be, on the front page of the newspaper or on the news, how would we feel about that? Does that tell a story that we would want to be told? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then maybe we actually need to say something.
That's a great test. Love that.
Yeah.
Rachel.
Put it in a postcard to your grandma is also another good test.
It's a good one.
Do you have a name for that test?
The put it in a postcard to your grandma test. It's the official trademark name.
I was going to say, that's great. Rachel, let's imagine somebody skipped the first half of this episode they turned on this episode and they said, you know what, I'm just going to fast forward till close to the end for no reason. And they ended right here, right now. What are 1 to 2 big takeaways you hope that they would have?
Your takeaway should be go back and listen to all of the episodes because there's a lot to learn, not just
Yes,
this episode.
please.
But after you have done that one, and you should probably rate them, like them, and put them out on social
Subscribe.
media also. But okay, subscribe. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Other than that, I wish that more people would understand how small moments matter. Most careers and relationships don't derail because of like one big dramatic incident. These relationships erode through lack of trust and, these minor cuts. So it's those side comments, it's the jokes, it's the eye rolls, it's those things. It matters when who speaks up, whose ideas get heard, who tells somebody that that's not appropriate. Respect should not be an extra. Respect should be like table stakes for coming to work. We started off with, I want to make sure that work doesn't suck. And so those are the skills as a leader or just as a colleague to stand up and say, this is how I'm going to work best. And working in an environment where we're cutting each other down or there's disrespect or jokes at someone else's expense, yeah, that doesn't work for me. And so use the power that you have, use your voice, practice, and find something that feels comfortable to you, that you can say when something just feels off. And you can borrow the oof, because it works in so many scenarios.
Yeah, I love that. So, Rachel, how can the people who have heard this episode, how can they get in contact with you? How can they find you and just learn more about you?
I would love to hear from any of your listeners. You can find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Platt. I post regularly about leadership topics, people strategy, funny things about work, how to make work not suck. Of course, on my website, platinumconsulting.com. Platinum is spelled with 2 T's, like my last name, back to your original comment. And the people who benefit the most from working with Platinum are typically organizations with 30 to 300 plus employees. They care about their mission, they care about the results, and they know that something in their people strategy just isn't working the way that it should be, as well as it should. And they're ready to move beyond compliance and onboarding and the basics and build a culture where people grow and feel respected and they stay. So hope to hear from anyone who wants to chat about this.
Love that. And Lucy, what do you got going on for the people?
Well, what I have going on, a lot of things, but one of the things, especially these days, that I would like to share today is a free saboteur assessment that can tell you what are your internal patterns that might be sabotaging you, your communication, your leadership, your stress management that make it hard to stay calm when somebody gives you the comment that you are maybe too sensitive. So if you want to take that assessment, go to my website, mindfittery.com/be free. And you will know more. What about you,
Love
Chris?
that.
How people can reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. Otherwise, you can find me on this podcast. Rate, like, subscribe, follow us. Let us know in the comments what you stood out to you from today, what you loved, and just keep listening, keep tuning in. Rachel, Thank you so much for being on our podcast. It was so great to learn from you and hear your experiences.